Hello and welcome to the Gold, Goats, and Guns podcast for episode 17, which would be my favorite episode since 17 is my favorite number. My name is Tom Luongo and we have a lot to talk about. It's Tuesday, January 21st, 2020, and Hillary Clinton is back in the presidential race. Between the new Netflix documentary, which confirms I made the right choice in canceling my subscription to Netflix, and today's front page fluff piece on The Hollywood Reporter, it's clear the DNC plan is to bring Hillary back from the grave to save the Democrats from the demon Trump. Before we get to that, however, I want to remind you that this podcast is brought to you every Tuesday and whenever the spirit moves me. You can subscribe to it on iTunes, Podbean, Spotify, or any of your other favorite podcast platforms via the RSS feed, and it is published through Spreaker. I also want to remind you that you can follow my work at tomluongo.me, which is my blog. You can follow me on Twitter at TFL1728. Live streams, they happen on YouTube and DLive.tv every Monday night at 8 and every Friday night at 8:30 p.m. EST. Warning, I'm a bad boy, I've got a potty mouth, and I am not afraid to use it. But you can also support verified publishers like me by downloading and installing the Brave browser, where you can get paid in crypto tokens called BAT for voluntarily being served internet advertising as opposed to feeding the Google beast. Brave protects your online privacy while saving you time and bandwidth by blocking all those pesky data snoopers that are feeding the growing surveillance state. Use my referral code at brave.com/Tom148 to support the podcast directly, because if you use it for more than 30 days, I get a referral fee. And lastly, you can support me on Patreon at patreon.com/Gold, Goats, and Guns, where you can sign up for the private market reports, which are published every Wednesday and Sunday, and or the Gold, Goats, and Guns monthly newsletter designed to wrap up all this geopolitical chaos, the global macroeconomics, the shifting cultural trends into a portfolio strategy designed to help you make sense of a world going mad. Intro over. Let's get to the podcast. Hillary is coming back. I don't think there should be any doubt in anyone's mind at this point who studies U.S. politics and U.S. media with any degree of diligence, right? It's pretty clear at this point that the reason for this is that Hillary wants one last kick at the can. She's 73 years old, or will be in October. She'll be the oldest president to serve in her first term, FYI. This is something that became obvious to me when I was thinking about this morning. There are many reasons why Hillary is going to be coming back into the race, or at least what the plan is. And she's setting the table now just in case. And here's my rundown as to why. I'm going to go through most of the candidates that are still in the race. I'm going to tell you where they all place in this whole strategy and understand that none of them can beat Donald Trump in a general election, period. As far as I'm concerned, she's the choice to run against Trump for the DNC proper. The DNC proper is still run by Clinton operatives like Debbie Wasserman Schultz and I think Nancy Pelosi and others. Remember, Martin Armstrong earlier in the week put out a blog post saying that his contacts in D.C. are telling him the only reason Pelosi went along with the impeachment at all was to help clear the way for Hillary by binding down in an impeachment trial all the other senators that are running for the presidency, whom are completely unacceptable to either the DNC or Wall Street or the MIC or anybody else that matters, right? In no way does the DNC want Bernie Sanders. They didn't want him in 2016. They don't want him today. The fact that the squad, that would be people like AOC and Ilhan Omar and Cenk Uygur and the whole Zach Exley crew that's being funded by George Soros, those guys are looking to split the DNC in two. They want to see complete paranoid schizophrenic break of the DNC because they think that's the only way they're going to be able to get any kind of left-leaning party from their perspective back into American politics, which is by breaking the GOP. It's kind of like the same way that Trump took over the GOP from within inside of it in order to try and push it in a more populist direction as opposed to a purely globalist perspective. And it's the same thing that's going on with the squad there as well. So the DNC is having to fight off an internal challenge, which is splitting their base. You've got 4 candidates coming into Iowa, all polling in double digits, and none of them are capable of beating Trump. Wall Street doesn't want Elizabeth Warren any more than they want Bernie Sanders. This is clear. Warren can't raise money. Her fourth quarter money totals were abysmal, and that's mostly because she can't raise money from Wall Street because she's gone so far to the left, just like Sanders, that Wall Street can't or won't trust her with the Oval Office. So Warren is off the table. Sanders is obviously off the table. Pete Buttigieg has a lot of money behind him, but he's running a VP campaign. Mike Bloomberg is even older than Clinton is, or older than Trump, and no one thinks that a white billionaire Jewish bond broker and media mogul will set the hearts afire amongst the progressive Democratic left. Like, seriously, Mike Bloomberg is not going to be a candidate. Mike Bloomberg actually is the biggest stalking horse for Hillary Clinton. He's the one running a big targeted data information. And then there's Tom Steyer. He's just there to mung things up and keep people like Tulsi Gabbard and others from breaking out of the pack by continually and constantly splitting the vote off in multiple directions. And that's the whole point of someone like Tom Steyer. If you think that Tom Steyer is actually polling 7% in New Hampshire, you're out of your mind. Of course he's not. If he's got 2 or 3%, that's all that's necessary to keep someone like Tulsi Gabbard breaking into double digits and then changing the conversation completely. That's his job. Don't kid yourself. Joe Biden can't complete a sentence. There's no way to make him a credible candidate. He's just there to keep the impeachment narrative vaguely credible in the minds of mostly disinterested voters, the ones who are kind of scanning the headlines and wondering what's going on here, and who are not crazy about Trump and therefore can believe that he would do something as silly as go after his political opponents in an election year on an open phone call. But, they're not paying very close attention to this, and that's a certain percentage of the population, call it 5%, 7%, whatever it is. But that's what Biden's there for. He will be thrown overboard, without a doubt. The entire impeachment strategy, if you look at it, is simply you take attrition by constantly throwing new information out all day long, which is of less and less and less importance, and you add time to that, and you create damage. Political damage. You cleave some portion of Donald Trump's base away from him. The leverage that the impeachment gives them hurt Trump on foreign policy. I've already gone over this in previous podcasts and in previous articles, that the neocons on the right and within the GOP, I wouldn't say force Trump's hand, but put him in a position where in order to shore up their votes for him and their support for him in an impeachment trial in the Senate, well, he kind of had to go out and do something that they wanted him to do. And if you believe the Iraqi prime minister about General Soleimani, that he was there to begin the brokering of a peace deal between the Saudi Arabians and the Houthis in Yemen and bringing Iran's terms to the table, you believe at that point that Saudi Arabia begins to move out of the orbit of the U.S., Israeli, Saudi Arabian alliance. They start acting independently. That cleaves them off from Israel. That's an unacceptable situation. And so killing Soleimani and ending that process at that moment in time, because Soleimani is really probably the only guy who could broker that deal, okay? Because he's the only one with enough clout within all the Shiite militias around the region to actually make any deal with the Saudis stick, okay? Because remember, at the end of the day, he may be in charge of all these things, but there's still guys on the ground, right? And so you have to get them to stand down. And only somebody who commands the respect of all of these people would be able to do that. So taking out Soleimani was absolutely a strategic play in order to prevent peace from breaking out in the Middle East, which is consistent with the neocon strategy, which is to create as much chaos as possible. So understand that the impeachment created leverage against Trump, because now you've got wobbly senators like Lindsey Graham and Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz and others who, if he hadn't done any of that, you would be hard-pressed to believe that they wouldn't allow the Democrats to do as much damage to Trump as possible during the impeachment campaign. But it also, not only does this hurt Trump, it also hurts Sanders and Warren by forcing them off the campaign trail for as long as the trial is going on, because they can't get to their cell phones during the trial, they can't campaign, they can't raise money, can't do any of that stuff. Okay, and that's important. As we come into the primary season, it's January 21st. New Hampshire's in 20 days. The next 5 or 6, the next week at a minimum, is going to be tied up with the stupid impeachment, even with Mitch McConnell's accelerated time schedule for opening and closing arguments and all of that stuff. So the goal here is to hurt them as much as possible coming into New Hampshire, Iowa, and for people like Biden and Buttigieg and others to shore up some delegates and to ensure that there's some kind of brokered convention as we go forward here. That's the whole goal. You want to splinter the field so much that you wind up with a brokered convention and that nobody wins a majority of delegates. And the reason why this is more important this year than last time in 2016 is that the superdelegates can't vote on the first ballot. In the past, they'd always been able to vote on the first ballot, and they make up almost 16% of the delegates who vote for the presidency within the Democratic Party. And so with them off the table, now the strategy has to be to ensure a brokered convention as opposed to using the superdelegates as a hammer to stop anybody who's unacceptable from gaining the nomination. Now they have to be used differently. This impeachment strategy, this is why Nancy Pelosi held up the articles of impeachment for over a month, for as long as she could get away with. She was also hoping that she could get some more damning evidence against Trump and possibly even an obstruction of justice charge if the courts would have ruled in her favor for his refusing the House's demand to subpoena his staff, which he said no to. They weren't allowed to go there. And she was hoping that she could get an obstruction of justice charge if the courts ruled in her favor, but they didn't. And so she has to go with it now. But she held on to them for as long as possible, drag this out, bring out the lead harness thing, which was dumb, And they'll continue to bring out other things as well. And for all of the last week, it's been very obvious to me that they have cranked up the Donald Trump is not an acceptable president, regardless of anything else. So we've seen this. He's not fit for rule. That he's, if anything, they're going to even go so far as to try and put in a 25th Amendment challenge if they have to at some point. I don't think that's off the table. I don't give it a lot of odds, right? I don't give it short odds or anything, but I think it's certainly plan C if this is plan A. So understand that we're down to that point. These might have been plan C or D originally, but now they're plan A. Now, how does this figure into Hillary Clinton coming back? Well, if nobody is capable of commanding a majority of the delegates and the convention is completely split, who do you think becomes the glue candidate that the DNC wanted in the first place anyway? And all of this, every bit of it, has been nothing but Kabuki Theater to prove that the only person who can beat Donald Trump is Hillary Clinton. That's just the way I see it. And I don't see any other way through this that allows the DNC to save face in any way. And if they finally put the Hillary thing to bed, even if she loses to Trump again, this, I think, is their best plan. I think the other thing that they're hoping for is that this impeachment thing allows them to do as much damage to Trump as possible and to possibly even get him removed from office. And here's the gig. I have a couple of different things on that. But McConnell allowing for an immediate motion to dismiss is big. It's a big thing for Trump. And if they can get that motion to pass, all of this ends and the 90% of what the Democrats are trying to achieve with the impeachment goes away. Sanders and Warren go back onto the campaign trail. It hurts Hillary's chances in the long run, yada, yada, yada. The chances of a brokered convention go down. McConnell setting a 2-day trial as opposed to 3 days or however long they were going to make this go is, again, a blow to the DNC's plans to stretch the time out as much as possible. They want to be able to call witnesses. They want to think that John Bolton is going to turn on Trump. After Trump just killed Soleimani, I got news for you. John Bolton's going to walk up there and go, President Trump is the greatest president who ever walked the face of the earth. I don't know what you people are talking about. If you think that John Bolton is not going to roll over and screw the Democrats at an impeachment trial at this point, you're crazy. Because that's the thing that he would delight in doing. They want Bolton up there, and they should be worried about what they think they're going to get. They want the circus, and they want it to go along as long as possible. Now, the biggest question here is, can Trump navigate all this and get through this? So what's the possibility of the motion to dismiss going through? Well, it's only a 53-47 Senate. So you only need 4 GOP senators to vote to extend the proceedings, to keep the thing going at every stage. And the first one would be Trump filing an immediate motion to dismiss, which he should. And I don't think that's going to pass, right? I don't think it ends there. I think Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, Romney, and at least one other will keep this thing going. At least one other. I don't even think that's going to go well. I think that first vote is going to be very telling as to where this thing is going to go. If it's worse than 55-45 in favor of Trump, is in serious trouble. Because then after that, remember that there will still be a vote within McConnell's framework. There's still a second vote as to whether or not the Senate is going to be able to vote as to whether or not they should extend the thing to call witnesses. That's currently not on the table, but the Senate can ask for witnesses for more information. So that's another vote. And that's why I say if the first vote, immediate to dismiss, is like worse than 55-45 against, and the thing continues, then it's not going to be hard for them to get 51-49 to start calling witnesses and to extend this thing out for another 2 weeks or whatever, 3 weeks or whatever they're going to do with it. And then it gets crazy. And then it really harms Bernie Sanders. It really harms Elizabeth Warren, because now they're in a position where they have to spend all this time doing that and not actually campaigning. I don't think it all works. So let's watch the way this plays out. The way this looks to me, Mitch McConnell gave Schumer and Pelosi and company just enough to allow him to get political cover with his aggressive timetable and being unfair. Schumer gets the grandstand, even though he knows that the fix is in, about how McConnell is trying to run a cover up and all this other nonsense. It's crazy. It's all just typical hand-wringing and virtue signaling. Okay. This thing is a lot worse for Trump than I think anybody is really counting on at this point. But again, I could be wrong, and I'd be happy to be wrong. I think it's a coin flip as to whether or not this is going to go any further, because the truth is that they want 2 people they know they can control, because they know that a second term for Trump is bad for them. Impeachment will have failed. Russiagate will have failed. He'll be free at that point if he wants to clean out his White House and cabinet, which I think he wants to do, getting rid of the neocons like Pompeo and Haspel and the rest of them. I think that that's sincere, okay? I think he's been left with very shallow employee pool. because of his poor Senate, and that after the election, he might be in a better position if he survives all this and comes out of it in a second term with 55-45 in the Senate or something like that. I haven't looked at the Senate map to think that through, but it's very possible. It gives him the opportunity to do that. Whether Donald Trump is going to do that or not, whether he's so thoroughly compromised at this point that he will do that is up in the air. I don't know. I'm just saying that he has the opportunity to then start doing some things, and even regardless of that, this is something everybody has to understand. And I've been saying this for months, and I've been saying it for a long, long time, which is the following. This is the last gasp for the neocons and for the Soros-backed neoliberals. And Hillary is like the arch neocon. And the coming financial meltdown that's going to start later this year and move into 2021 and all the way through Trump's second term is going to be the dividing line. And it's a generational divide. The millennials already feel like they've been thrown over. Gen X is so freaking angry with the way this country has sold everybody down the river that they're ready to just lynch most of the people in power. Metaphorically speaking, of course. So think about this. You think Pelosi, who's not a drunk, she's a stroke victim. You think she's going to be in power 4 years from now? You think Schumer's going to be there in 4 years? After reapportionment, after the next census comes through and New York loses 2 or 3 electoral votes, you think any of this stuff is going to continue? You have to start thinking about how many people start retiring. We saw this in Brexit in the UK. Once the wedge issue got to the point where it was politically untenable and people torched their careers to try and stop something that they were told to stop that was unpopular. When the opportunity presented itself for them to exit the stage quietly and walk away, they did. There's going to be tremendous turnover between now and 2024 election in the Senate and the House. And it's going to change the dynamic in the U.S. Congress completely and the U.S. legislature completely. Old power structures are going to be gone and new power structures are going to arise. This is what the progressives, the Cenk Uyghurs and that whole Young Turks thing, the Justice Democrats thing are banking on. They're banking on being able to destroy the DNC from within. If they lose this election badly, there's going to be all-out war within the DNC. The whole progressive left is going to have a complete and utter paranoid schizophrenic breakdown. And it's going to get worse. And into that vacuum, along with everybody scrambling to try and keep the banks from imploding and new monetary systems coming into play and all sorts of crazy stuff happening. Donald Trump, Loki, is still going to be president. And if you don't think that he's going to start taking revenge on the people who pissed in his cornflakes for the last 4 years, you're out of your mind. And that's what they're really worried about. And that's a lot of people who have been exposed. You think Tom Steyer? He's one of the big ones who have been creating policies like the Koch brothers on the right. I mean, do you think Steyer and Bloomberg are running for president because they're comfortable with the situation? That they've got Trump under control? No, they're desperate to try and get rid of him. Because they know damn well that while he may be not the strongest person in the world, he is one of the most vindictive. I used the term gangsternomics the other day in an article to describe U.S. foreign policy. And Trump has just ripped the Band-Aid off and said, look, this is what we do. His rhetoric is terrible and it's crude and it's all of those things, but it's what we do. He's just no longer trying to dress it up in moral flowery terms. Trump's a gangster and a narcissist. That's a dangerous combination for a second-term president. I've been arguing on Twitter all morning with Mike Krieger, and he can't see this point of Liberty Blitzkrieg. Mike's a great guy, and he's a fantastic political analyst. I fundamentally disagree with him on this. I'm looking at the situation going, these people are desperate. I mean, there's going to be a revolution in France, folks, okay? There's going to be another revolution in Italy. The United States is going to be out of Iraq at the latest, the middle of 2021, especially if Trump wins re-election. Because guys are going to start coming home in body bags. Every third day, we are seeing rockets in the green zone or rockets at an American base. At some point, it's going to be untenable for us to hold 5,000 troops there unless we're going to be willing to put 20 back in there. And I got news for you. There's no appetite for putting 15,000 more troops into Iraq. It's not happening. They want to hand Bernie Sanders the presidency. That's all that has to happen. So that's not going to happen until after November. Any expansion of U.S. foreign policy from an aggressive perspective is not going to happen until after the election. And they have installed somebody who they control completely. So this is why I still give it a coin flip that Trump's going to be removed from power during this impeachment in order to have Hillary, to clear the decks for Hillary to run against Mike Pence. I mean, honestly, if I was an evil oligarch, that's what I would be playing for. Is it a long odds strategy? Yeah, if I'm looking at the game board right now, I'm going, how else am I going to beat the people and their avatar, Donald Trump? I just don't think they're in control. I think the flying monkeys are in charge, as they keep saying. So the Wicked Witch is dead, except they're trying to resurrect her from the dead, unfortunately. I just don't know what you can do with a puddle. And even then, I don't even think Hillary beats Mike Pence as long as runs at all, because no one likes Hillary. And don't ever underestimate, this is the last point I'm going to make before I let you go this morning. Never underestimate Hillary's immense tone deafness. Okay? You got to think about what's her campaign going to be. I mean, her campaign in 2016 was I'm with her. Like, I'm the imperial one, or really the imperious one. And you will all kiss the ring, as it were. Well, this time it's going to be even more insufferable. You think she talked down to everybody during the last campaign? Just imagine after Trump was removed from office and she's running against Mike Pence. Even she's running against Trump, and Trump is impeached and gone through a dirty, ugly Senate trial that ends up with him being acquitted by like 5 votes or something. You don't think that Hillary's not going to run the, aren't you sorry you didn't vote for me the last time? You know, if you just supported me the last time, we could have avoided all of this. Like, you don't think Hillary's not going to say that a lot? Her sense of entitlement and her sense of narcissism exceeds even Trump's. At least Trump's a patriot. He might have a misguided sense of how to express that patriotism, but I don't doubt Donald Trump's patriotism. I think part of his problem is that he's got this fantastical boomer version of America in his head that never really existed. Okay, that's fine. I mean, if that's a fault, that's a fault. But putting him into this ultra-corrupt system, is anybody really confused about the outcome? Not really. Hillary, on the other hand, she's off the charts. Her motivations are purely her own. She's not only a narcissist, she's a psychopath who laughs at other people's misfortunes and only vaguely shows any sense of remorse when someone's harmed. And she only does it for political calculations. You can see it written all over her face. The woman's not even a good liar. I mean, most psychopaths are at least good liars. Honestly, as terrible as she is, she's the best they've got. And never underestimate the powers that be's desire to give us a Hobson's choice. So you never underestimate Hillary's tone deafness and her narcissism and her sense of entitlement, but never underestimate the quote-unquote deep state powers that be, their desire to give us a non-choice so that we can have Pence, who's they completely control, or we can have Hillary. It's the ideal matchup for them. Plays directly into Hillary's sense of victimhood. How could you ever vote for this man? She'll scold the electorate and she'll still lose to Pence, but it won't matter. And then, and this is the important part, because look, at the end of the day, if that's what happens, it'll be the lowest turnout election of all time because people will just stay home. And then the brewing hatred of our political elites will have crossed the Rubicon, and there will be no going back at all. And it will firmly set this country on the path to balkanization. That's what's at stake here for us. This is what's at stake there for them. Even if Hillary is not the nominee in the end, it does not matter. Everybody running their own agendas and the people in charge not willing to give up power leads us to the inescapable conclusion that eventually all of this ends. This is where I will agree completely with Mike Krieger that localism and decentralization are the future, and no better time than the present to get started and start preparing yourselves properly. That's been the Gold Goats and Guns podcast for Tuesday, January 21st, 2020. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like it, subscribe to it on your favorite podcast platform, do whatever you have to do. Send it out to your friends and family and the rest of them, all of that. And if you want to support the podcast, you can do so by a variety of different ways. Check me out over at my blog at tomluongo.me. You guys take care. You be well. You have a great week. We'll talk soon. Keep your stick on the ice.